Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me Espen Kane. Kane, good to have you on.
Always happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, it's all good. It's all good. And today we're going to be talking about Thaumiel, the Dark Divided Ones, one of Kane's books. And this book has to do with working with the demons in the sphere of Thaumiel, the two-headed demons. And how did this book come to be about?
This book came about from kind of a series I had wanted to do on each clip off. I had written one already on one of the clip off shells, and that was Harab Serapal, and that kind of went into that particular shell.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of authors that write on the clip off usually only dedicate a couple of pages to each of the shells. And I really wanted to expand on each of these and the energies and the intelligences that were involved with each of these shells,
Mm-hmm.
and really go in depth into each one of them, which hasn't really been done. I felt like it really needed more attention to each one of the shells. And so that's kind of how it came about overall. And then I still plan on eventually, after I get like 5, 6 more books that I've got lined up here out of the way, then
Yeah.
eventually get back to writing the series again. It's just one of those things that I think I'll work on here and there throughout my life, I guess. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but
I think. Go ahead.
I'll just say, each one of the books though also not only gave information on the shells and energies and intelligences, but they're kind of a path working each one of them themselves. So it starts with Thaumiel and works down, and a lot of people work up on the tree of life or tree of knowledge or death, depending on how you want to look at it. And the reason for that is because of Thaumiel were separation. They began separation from the Godhead, is what it's called. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to help have that path working be for the magician that really wanted to ties with that energy and really fully immerse themselves within the Citra Aura or the realm of the Citra Aura, which the clip off well in, and have full access to that realm um, through this system.
Mm-hmm. And that is unique because, first of all, there's not a lot of books dedicated to one sphere each on the Tree of Death, and then also, most books on the Tree of Death or the Tree of Life tend to work from the bottom up. This one teaches you from the work from the top down to separate from the Godhead.
Right. And and most books usually, sit around magic books anyway, around 30,000 or so words. These are about half. So these books
Mm-hmm.
are considered what I consider micro or mini grimoires, basically, that you put them all together and have a nice set there of
Yeah, there's
information.
not a lot of information that drags on and drags on. It's just simple to the point. This is how it is. And then of course there are exercises in the book that you can practice what you've been reading, straightforward to the point.
Right.
So
Yeah. That's a lot of my students, a lot of people that I work with. One of the major hurdles for people is religious dogma, and this was kind of designed to be brought forth to help people get past that.
mm,
And some of the workings that are involved in the work.
mm, okay. All right. So let's get into it. So the introduction, it says the tree of death of knowledge exists within the hidden shadows of Kabbalistic reality in a realm known as the Sitra Aura, the vast cold region where light is but a gray band upon the farthest horizons. The Sithara is an anathema of creation, for it lies concealed behind and below its illuminated counterpart, the realm of holiness and purity. And go ahead and explain what you mean by behind and below.
Well, the tree of life, we have different the different stations, and there's what we consider that front side, and
Mm,
there's an adverse, the clip off to the Sephira, and some people see it as, if you will, if you were to look at the Sephira from the front, it would be the reverse side. Sometimes it is considered below, so it just depends on how one views that magical structure, if you will.
Mm,
Many Kabbalists have different. It's not just one tree of life or one map, cosmological map of this whole situation. You know,
mm,
there's different ideas or concepts of the tree of life and tree of death. You know, corresponding to that, and
mm,
so it's the shadow side of that essentially is kind of what I was trying to convey there, the hidden side.
mm. Okay. Now, on page 19, it says elements of the greater and lesser keys of Solomon will be utilized within this grimoire. Um, and then let's speak about the gateways. So, for those of you who are watching right here, this is sort of a diagram that is to be drawn. Um, Said to be Chaldean in origin, it is known as the first gate of Nana, the moon, called Sin. Interestingly, the Necronomicon, Book of Shades, and the Greater Key all utilize the same esoteric doorway design, insert the names of their gods and spirits within that design, and attribute the portal's operation to the time of the waxing crescent moon as seen pictured, or at least at night when the moon is present. So this is something that is used within different occult literature and occult teachings.
Yeah, you know, I found it really interesting. You look at the Greater Key of Solomon, and you look at the Pentacles, and that's the only one that looks like that. You know, it's clearly different than all the rest of them. It's a doorway. I see Magick as a technology, and so looking at that and looking at how it was utilized in other systems, here we have the same configuration, but we have different data essentially that's been entered into that and utilized by those different forms of magic. And I think that that was really interesting and kind of backs up that, you know, this is a system here that isn't just, you know, spiritual. There's some kind of science here that is beyond what we're understanding or seeing. There's a science here that goes into these gateways, how this information is worked with,
Mm,
and so you know we have that. It's a gateway that's been plugged into the Pinnacle of Solomon. It's something that is really powerful, and in my experience, working with this as a vehicle to work into getting into the Citra Aura and working with the clip up. Um, the doorway itself, again, you're putting in different coordinates, essentially different information, plugging it in there. Um, kind of dialing it in. And as a bad example, kind of a funny example is like almost like Stargate, where it's like you to put in different coordinates to this and be able to go into these places. And that's kind of the idea of this, is to have this vehicle that the magician can utilize to access these realms.
mm-hmm. I like how you went ahead and made it specifically for the Black Magician. We'll get into more of that in a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about some lore here from Peru. So, okay, one Incan priest of the Temple of the Seven Rays named Aramu Maru fled from his temple with a sacred gold disc known as the Key of the Gods of the Seven Rays, hid in the mountains of Mayu Marca. He eventually came upon the doorway, which was being watched by shaman priests. He showed them the key of the gods, and a ritual was performed with the conclusion of a magical occurrence initiated by the gold disc, which opened the portal. And according to the legend, blue light did emanate from the tunnel inside. The priest Aramumaru handed the gold disc to the shaman and then passed through the portal, never to be seen again. So, for those who are watching, here's a picture of the cave that was found in Peru with the same gateway right there. And supposedly the priest fled into that portal was open and was never seen from again. What do you think about this ancient story here?
I think it's really interesting because again, we're seeing that there's this technology, and these gateways they're all over the world. You know, it's
Yeah.
just one example. You know, and it's carved into the rock, and I see that that's something that is important, is to actually create this gateway, create this physical representation of kind of combining the spiritual and material. Um, in the book of shades that you mentioned that I was talking about in the book, that's a really obscure little grimoire, however really really interesting, the stuff that's in there, but there's also directions for the magician to again carve into,
Mhm.
actually carving this gateway into rock or into some kind of material that you would actually subscribe in.
Mhm.
And I think that that's definitely we're able to do this, create these portals, and open up these gateways so that we can interact with these different realms and these different entities and intelligence.
I think that you're right in calling it ancient technology because, I mean, it may sound crazy to some people who are not too familiar with the occult, but gateways do exist. I've seen them open up in front of me after after ritual or doing magical practices, and it trips you out at first. I mean, there are gateways that can open up. Now, right here, you've altered these for the Black Magician. So for those who are watching, so you have one right there. There's the Grand Gateway, and then you have here the doorways right here. Okay, so having used this vehicle, it says, I can say with certainty that it is fully operational and a vital tool for any Black magician to utilize with this Qliphothic system. As mentioned, like the reverse engineering of a hexagram of Solomon, the doorway itself has been augmented with the correct names, descriptions, and sigils to activate the portal into the Sitrahra and specifically into Thaumiel. In the center of the doorway is written in the Hebrew name Thaumiel. On the right hand is written Satan, Sitrahra, Void, and on the left is written Moloch, Thaumiel, and versicle above the words on either side state, I shall pass, I am God. So originally, these were created for different purposes. However, you have altered them for the Black Magician to draw on the ground and go ahead and meditate.
Right. And with each of the, we talked about there being a different volume for each of the shells.
Yeah.
That pinnacle there, that gateway there that I've created with those specific coordinates are for this specific shell. Now, if you look at different books, if you were to look at Harab Serapul, it's also in there. It's also present, but it has different coordinates now in there. So if you look, it's a machine or a gateway that the magician can utilize to put in these different coordinates and utilize that to work with these specific energies of each of these shells.
Okay. Now let's go to okay. Now the next section there is actually a rite that's done utilizing this, where you draw the doorway, draw it on the ground, go ahead, sit down, lay down, meditate. But this is interesting. It says, visualize the ground drop away behind you, leaving you and the grand gateway suspended above the great void. And those who suffer from thalassophobia, the fear of the ocean and what lies within, will find it difficult to perform this rite, especially since one is summoning this great sinister force from behind, unable to see it, is akin to laying face up on the surface of the ocean, calling up Leviathan from the great black depths to devour you. Feel Chorin's own sinister presence, just as feeling one stand right behind you, breathing over your shoulder. As Chorin's own slithers and slowly guides up to you, visualize the great beast opening its jaws, pauses, then one sudden movement strikes, takes you down within itself. Once consumed, the Black Magician gains entrance into the Sitrahra, and specifically the Qliphothic shell, Thaumiel. So you say that if someone has a fear of a large body of water, they're going to have a hard time going through this. However, it can be done.
Right. It's facing that fear of having to do that. There's no easy way to do these things. A lot of people are looking for easy ways to perform magic. I'm finding not skip steps, not having to do this or that, or asking a lot of questions as far as like, is there an easier way to do this? There some things have to be done a certain way, and with this is that way. Yeah, I have a fear of creatures in the water. I don't go in the water very often. So, I mean, there's creatures in there.
Yeah.
People are, it's not a good
I mean,
idea.
well, for someone who does have a fear of large bodies of water, that's the advice you tell them, is you have to go through if you want access to that sphere.
Right. And the idea is laying here face up, looking essentially, you're looking at the sky or the ceiling or whatnot.
Yeah.
And you're imagining, this where you're calling up and imagining at the same time this beast coming up, Leviathan coming up to take you, swallow you down into this realm. This idea.
Okay.
So it's like once that occurs, you're pulled into that realm and able to work with
Yeah,
those.
that really stood out to me. It's that right there. Now, in on page 34, it says, Thaumiel were once mighty angels known as the perfection of God. These angels desired individuality and freedom. And so without once discovered, this lust for more power and individuality caused their fall from perfect grace by becoming unbalanced according to God. He saw their lust for individuality as arrogant and prideful, like Satan and Moloch. After their removal from the holy presence, they then became the Thaumiel, the duality of God, the first fiery demons of Qliphoth. The Thaumiel are described as great, two-headed, bat-winged beasts which wildly screech into the black void. Now, they can also appear as heavenly angels. Is that correct?
Right, exactly. So there's a duality there in several ways. One of
Mm-hmm.
their appearance, and the other again, being the opposite of God almost. So again, they're at the head of the clip off. They're at the top, whereas God is again the Godhead. So it's like there's a separation there, and there's an individuality that is sought. I find it ironic. I mean, getting into the mind of the Godhead,
Mm-hmm.
that the Godhead would consider that jealous, be jealous or egotistical of this when that what it itself created for it. So it's anything that wants to be separate from that Godhead, from that energy, anything that wants to be individual or an island of itself,
Right.
is considered evil by that Godhead. It does not want any of itself essentially to be individual. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the war. I mean, that's the age old war of Lucifer and individuality and being
Mm-hmm.
essentially truly free.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Now let's go on page 53. It says, within this structure was said to exist perfect harmony, all was balanced and whole. Though when Adam and Eve separated the fruit of the tree of knowledge from its branches and partook of it, the unity was broken within this construct and a fall or separation occurred. Tiferet, beauty, Yesod, foundation, and Malkuth, kingdom, fell down a placement on the tree of life, opening the abyss within the tree, and the knowledge came into existence. And thus beauty and foundation of God's perfect ignorant kingdom fell, and knowledge born. As the fruit plucked from the tree of knowledge begets knowledge, so too is knowledge born to the tree of life. So I like how you gave the analogy of the tree, and as the story unfolds in the Garden of Eden, things were altered.
right, right. There was a perfection there, but a current that ran through it being chaos. But there is a perfection. The tree of life, there's some old diagrams of it that are different. There's more. If you look at it, it's more symmetrical. It works balanced. But then when that fall occurs, then we have Death enter into this, and so it breaks that open, and it allows for that dark side or the shadow side, hidden side of the shells to manifest and occur. So what we have here is what we're talking about is we have a physical fall of man, if you will, on the material, and we're looking at that being reflected on the spiritual level.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then there's a chapter on Moloch. Um, Now let's keep in mind that the name Moloch also is synonymous with the Hebrew word Melech, which means king. Um, and there's also a rite dedicated to Moloch. Uh, but first of all, let me ask you this: uh, where do you think some of the misconceptions about Moloch come from? Some people are hesitant to work with him because of various stories.
It's a very, I say, it is a very strong and very disciplined force. So there's a lot of misconceptions there in that energy. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people come up against that and they find a negativity about it when it's really, again, if you look at the Harab Serapol, the burning, Ravens of the Burning God, the same kind of energy in a way where it's like you have a driving force, but that driving force doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing or an evil thing. So
Right.
it's having to understand, have a different perspective of working with these entities. Most people, when they go into working with magic, they have preconceptions. They have expectations of what they are going to see, what they're going to experience. some of these can be helpful, a lot of them are not. Everybody has their own personal reality grid. They have their own filters and how they view things. Not only that, but the entity itself has a way of wanting to either show up in whatever form it wants to or not, and how it comes across. So it's dealing with these and having different perspectives, stepping outside the box. Don't expect this or don't expect that. Do the work and see what comes through for you. Because if you're looking, as I try to explain to my students, is if you're expecting one description, let's say a goetic description from a spirit, and you're looking and expecting only that, and something else occurs, you're going to dismiss that because this didn't happen that you were expecting. And so you're throwing away experiences that are personal to you because you're expecting going off the descriptions of somebody else's ritual or experience. So
Yeah.
it's like, go into this. These are guidelines. These are my personal experiences and some other people's experiences.
Right.
But try to basically keep an open mind as far as what actually comes through. Do the work and see what happens. And that goes for result as well. Don't believe, don't disbelieve. Do the work. Put your energy into the work, and then see what happens.
Yeah, it's one thing to hear about a spirit from certain people or read about a certain spirit in certain books, but when you begin to work with them personally, you begin to get to know them personally. Big difference.
Big difference, right?
Now, in the rite of Moloch, it describes this rite, the raising of Moloch. It says various materials can be used for the creation of the circle, though I personally prefer salt. And here it is right here. Here it is for those who are watching right there. Now, many have said salt is not preferred by spirits, that it should not be used. However, there is very reasonable and scientific explanation as to why I do. I believe that everything is vibrating energy. Crystals are conductors of energy and therefore are employed in ritual use to transfer the energy and intent of the Black Magician into them, thus the magical circle. I personally have always had great magical success using salt, but to each their own. Some people don't like to use salt. Some people do. But yeah, you are right in saying that crystals are conductors of energy when it comes down to it.
You'll read a magic book and there'll be an instruction in there. Lay out this circle, lay out this triangle, say these words, it happens. But it's not how it is. People are wondering, why am I not getting results? Why is this not happening? Why does this feel dead? Because it is dead. All right. The idea of putting out these lines that you're creating. When I have salt and putting my energy into this, I'm thinking about the ritual. I'm thinking about the spirit. I'm infusing that energy into the working. I'm imagining a blue flame. For me, it's blue. It could be whatever color you want. It's a tradition. After I'm making these lines, igniting. And so when I'm done with that triangle, I can see in my third eye, my mind's eye, I have infused that triangle. I have brought it to life. It's not just dead lines upon the floor. It is filled with intention. It is filled with my intent. My intent is filled with that spirit. And there's the difference. And you do the same thing with the circle, So with this, again, magic is a science. It's a technology. I'm looking at that from that angle in that regard. And crystals hold energy. They are a transmitter there. So I'm infusing these energies with my intent, or the salt with my intent, and so it's bringing these things to life, and not just words, or not just symbols on the floor.
Yeah, correct. I mean, some people don't understand that, is that intention and visualization is so important in magic. Yeah, it helps set the precedent.
I mean, intention's everything. If you, it's Crowley called it, true will. It's a little bit different for me. I look at it as intent rather than true will. There's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like your intent going into anything is key. It's it's the engine in the car, essentially. So.
Very well said. Well, Qayin, it's been nice talking with you. Again, Thaumiel, The Dark Divided Ones. You can find it on Amazon. Link will be in the video description below. Qayin, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
And everybody watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.